Welcome back to Highland League Weekly, the exclusive subscribers-only football show that sees the Press and Journal put the spotlight on the Breedon Highland League. I'm Ryan Cryle. Next to me here is our resident Highland League expert, Callum Law, for this special season preview show. For those that wanted us to sit down for the last 2 seasons, or go back to sitting down, you've won. Congratulations. Now, it barely feels like any time has passed at all, to me anyway, since Brechin City's dramatic title win on the final day of last season against title rivals Buckie Thistle at Victoria Park. Brechin were then unsuccessful in their pyramid playoff bid to get promoted back to the SPFL, but the benefit for us, Callum, they're still in the Highland League, and that's going to make the title race hopefully as competitive as it has been the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously from Brechin's perspective, they would have far rather been successful in that. I mean, it was a toss of a coin job really against Spartans. They lost on penalty kicks, but from a Highland League perspective, in terms of the overall product, there's no question to me that, you know, the Highland League's enhanced by having the champions in it again this season, and you would expect them to be, you know, go close to winning it once again. I think when it comes to sort of the race for the title, not discounting anybody, but you probably start by looking at last season's top 5 as the protagonists, and I think with Brechin, they've had to sort of refresh their squad a wee bit. Guys like Jamie Bain, Kieran Ingalls, Botti Biabi, Jordan Northcote, who made, you know, big impressions last season and played, you know, were a big part of the squad that won the title. They've moved on, and then they've managed to bring in, I mean, got some guys maybe we know a bit more about than others. I mean, Seth Patrick, somebody who was at Brechin before and looked good and then had to leave for various reasons, and he's come back. And Lewis Martin, somebody that's played at a higher level for a long time with Dunfermline and Kelty Hearts. So they're sort of guys you'd probably, as an outsider, you'd know what you're getting, but then some of the other ones have signed sort of younger players like Ewan White and Stuart Heenan, Spencer Moreland, who've been with like Dundee United, St Johnstone. Obviously good, must be good players because they've been at a full-time level, but it's maybe stepping into senior football, Highland League part-time, how they handle it, but I'd expect them to be good players obviously, but that's all part of it, maybe how their sort of slightly refreshed squad handles it.
You talked about last season's top 5, so as well as Brechin, that included Buckie Thistle in second, Brora Rangers, Formartine United, and Fraserburgh. Fraserburgh last season, a disappointing defence of the title, they'd won the previous campaign. For them, out of those 4, who do you think's strengthened well? Are there ones? Do you think the order might be slightly different this season, or are there teams there that have recruited in a way that suggests they're, you know, potentially going to be higher?
I think. I mean, I would start with, I think Buckie have strengthened quite well. I mean, the 2 goalies have brought in Stuart Knight, very good and vastly experienced, and Ewan Storrier, somebody who, when he was at Huntly, I always thought at times I saw him, I always thought he was good for Huntly. He'll provide good competition. Darryl McHardy, obviously that's quite an eye-catching signing for Buckie, just because obviously up to now really all his career he's been playing in the Scottish League with Elgin, and there was quite a few clubs understandably chasing him. Dale Wood as well, somebody versatile, good experience as well really in the Highland League with the likes of Forres and Rothes. And then you've got Jack McIver again, somebody who he's done well at the level with Huntly and Formartine, and last season he'd a spell in League One with Peterhead, so they all look pretty good signings. And you've also got Lyle Keir, who Buckie had signed but was on loan at Dice last season, sort of coming into the first team picture, and a lot of folks seem to be speaking quite highly of him. So Buckie look like they've strengthened well, certainly, but then on the flip side of that, it's still worth remembering that Kevin Fraser's still out and has been for the best part of a year now, and that's obviously a big loss to them. Sean Wood still coming back. Sam Morrison has been back in pre-season, and it looks like Sam Uckert will probably be moving on because he's been placed on the transfer list. So, and obviously they've the likes of Lee Herbert and Mark McLaughlin have gone to Forest, so there has been, you know, a fair bit of turnover there, but they'd look strong again. And I think the feeling you get with Buckie is after the sort of last couple of years that now, you know, they really need to be this season going and winning something, whether it's a cup or the league or whatever. I mean, you look elsewhere. I thought Formartine, if you'd said to me 3 weeks, a month ago about Formartine, I would have said, I mean, I think they'll be certainly in the mix, but I might have had them right up there, you know, challenging at the very top, because I thought the sort of business they'd done early with getting the likes of Mark Lawrence, and I thought was good business, and Jake Stewart for Rothes Rovers, somebody sort of coming into the league looking to make an impact. But obviously since then they've lost the likes of Mark Gallagher, Tyler McKeita to Cove to full-time football, which is one of those sort of pitfalls really. The two of them did well for Formartine, and you know, they were both wanting to go back full-time, so I mean, good moves for them, but obviously it blows for Formartine. But they have managed to get, I mean, Lewis Wilson, somebody that they've signed, can play defence or midfield, that's come back from America. He was in trial with Peterhead. They've signed him. Mark Lawrence I mentioned, so they have an Adam Emsley on loan for Aberdeen, who's sort of highly rated by them. So they've replaced well, but clearly I thought, I mean, Gallagher especially, because he was such an ever-present last season, was a player they wouldn't want to lose. But I think, again, for Martin, fourth last season, reached a cup final. You're probably looking to try and, I mean, everyone says it, but try and progress again. So is that going higher in the league, getting closer to the top two? I mean, they weren't far away last season. They were the only team to beat Brechin in the league, which showed you their quality. And then maybe in the cups as well, can they try and pick up a bit of silverware? Brora, it's kind of interesting,
they added that
because
experience that Ali McDonald was talking about last season.
Well, it's with Brora, because you sort of find yourself season after season probably saying it's a lot of the same faces, which is, you know, and I suppose in a way is a good thing, because they've got continuity and it's a lot of players there that know how to have success. But I mean, I think Ali still would like to have a slightly deeper squad, because that's the last couple of seasons probably been a thing with Brora to an extent, is they're no doubt in their quality, but maybe don't have the depth of some of the other sides. But I mean, they've signed a couple of younger guys, Danny Gillen and Ross Hardy, that have been with Inverness, Buckie Thistle and Ross County, to sort of add to the depth. And Paul Brindle's come back to the club for Clach, who's, you know, somebody that's been there and done it. You know, no questions about his what he'll bring. So, I mean, you'd be foolish to discount Brora for being in the mix when they've, you know, been over the course before, and with the quality they've got. Fraserburgh, I mean, likewise, it's pretty similar group to what they've had. Aidan Sapel's come in, and I think he looks, wee bits I've seen in pre-season and even seen him last season at Rothes, he looks like quite a good sort of a wide player for them to bring in. And then they maybe never really replaced Grant Campbell when he left retired a year ago, so the way to replace him is to get him to come back. So I mean, there's no question he adds his experience, and he's just a winner really, Grant. And even if he's not necessarily playing every game, I think he's a really invaluable presence to have in your squad. So I think that improves them. And again, like Fraserburgh, they've won 8 trophies in the last 8 years. Speaking to people, there seemed to be a lot of kind of anger and disappointment about the league campaign last season, but they still picked up Aberdeenshire Cup, Aberdeenshire Shield. So again, that's
the standard.
It's easy to just throw these sort of names about, but there's a reason you do it, and that's because they're the teams that have been there and done it and are usually in the hunt for silverware. So you'd expect them to be there again.
Away from that top, or potential top 5, perhaps 5 favourites to be in the top 5, you've got the likes of Inverurie Locos, who are a side with good resources. You've got Brechin City, similar. You've got these kind of, I hate to say challenger clubs, but clubs that have maybe shown ambition to get into that top pack, Nairn County, Huntly. What do you see their four fates being?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, Banks of D, I would start with them because it's been talked about often enough, but the points deduction last season skewed where they were in the league. It's like if you add the points back on, they would have been 6th in last season's table. And I think really they're looking to be in that top 5, top 6, if not higher. And I mean, they showed in the Highland League Cup what they could do in terms of going and winning that, and showed the quality that they possess. I think they might have liked to have done a wee bit more in the transfer market. I mean, their signings so far, it's kind of Kyle Irvin, the goalie, was it Keith, and decent young goalie, and then promoting players from their junior team. I think they might have liked to have done a wee bit more, and they maybe still will done a wee bit more business, but by the same token, if you looked at the players that were already there, there's a good group there, and again, a lot of players that are used, whether it's been juniors or in the Aberdeenshire competitions, and in the League Cup last season, a lot of guys that are used to winning things. I mean, in Locos, a lot of experience. Like if you go through their side or their squad, Andy Reid, Greg Mitchell, Mark Souter, Jamie Mickey, Callum Dingwall, Johnny Smith, Gary Wood, a lot of good Highland League players there. But I mean, we've probably been saying for a few years, can they sort of go and put up more of a sustained challenge? Can they be a bit more consistent? Can they, have some sort of success in the cups again? Because they have got as a club, they have got what it takes to be successful, but for whatever reason, it hasn't quite happened. So I mean, that's the onus on them. They were obviously close to winning something in the League Cup last year, and I think maybe if they could win something, if it was a cup, you'd probably see a good knock-on as a result of that in terms of more consistency and improvement. I mean, sort of below that, Nairn, the time last season that Stephen Mackay was there, they had quite a rapid turnaround to finish 7th. Were impressive, really. But again, sort of been on the fringes, threatening maybe for a couple of seasons to try and push to get into that top 6, and it's never quite happened. And their recruitment this summer has been quite interesting. It's a lot of young players. I mean, and guys like as well Ben Kelly, who was Player of the Year in the North Caledonian League with Winver Gordon, stepping up to play in the Highland League. So quite interested to see what he can do, because his record at North Cali level's really good. So you'd think he's potentially a good prospect. And guys like Aaron Nicholson as well, who's with Buckie Thistle and a Scotland Schoolboy International, a couple of guys on loan for Ross County. These sort of things would be slightly maybe younger tinged in Nairn squad now. I mean, they've still got likes of Ross Tokley, Gethins, Andy Gregg, these sort of guys with experience. So again, you're sort of looking at them, can they make a sustained push? I mean, it's difficult, but even if you look at that Saturday's game, they're playing Brora at home, and if you are going to move higher up the league from where they were last season, these are the sort of games where if you can pick up points in some of them over the course of a season, you might do it. I mean, Huntly, it's a bit similar again. They haven't been particularly active in terms of bringing players in. Lewis Crosby and Kyle Morrison, a goalie. But I think the issue perhaps that Huntly have had they've improved the last couple of seasons under Alan Hale, and he was able to, we're bringing in certain players, make that improvement. But now where they were last season in 8th, to get at those players to take you forward again is more difficult, just because of the way the market is. But then they do also have quite a settled squad, and I mean, a core sort of guys, Michael Clark, Kyle Dolling, Ross Still, Andy Hunter up front, these sort of players that are all good players. So I'd expect Huntly or Nairn probably to be similar to how they were last season, but then they'll obviously be looking to try and make a bit of progression if they can. I mean, below that, even
Rothes.
for Rothes, again, can I find myself a bit in the same boat as I maybe said last year about Rothes, but when their best 11's available, they can beat anybody on their day, no question about it. Good side, but when they've had injuries and suspensions, which they had, particularly first half of last season, affecting them a lot, maybe their lack of depth to an extent gives them an issue. Forres is an interesting one because, I mean, a lot of change there again. Ken Stuart Knight's away, Graham Fraser stepped away for Fitba, Martin Grote stepped away for Fitba, Dale Wood with Stuart Knight's gone to Buckie, and they were, I mean, Graham Fraser was unavailable for most of last season because of injury, but even still, they're 4 guys that in recent years have been mainstays of Forest mechanics, and then you add in that Ben Barron's gotten a step up to Elgin. Good move for him, but again, disappointing for Forest. I mean, they have got Dylan Lawrence coming on loan as part of that deal, who I think's a really promising player as well, and somebody I think will do well for them. But sort of the market Forest are operating in, it's quite a young side now. Players will need to step up, and Stephen McDonald sort of rebuilt a bit last summer. He's going to have to do it again this summer, so how they get on will be interesting to see. I mean, in terms of the forward areas, it's like signed a guy who was quite prolific for Ross County's under-18s and Callum Frame, and I think the hope is he's sort of similar, quite a big lad as well, hoping that he can sort of fill the Ben Barron role. And then, I mean, some of their other signings, like Callum Howarth going back there for Nairn, although he's been bothered with injuries in recent years, he's a good player and knows what it takes at the level. Mark McLaughlin for Buckie, I mean, kind of found himself out of Buckie's team a bit more last season, but the season before that, again, when they were second, he was basically an ever-present, so you think he should be a good signing as well. And a couple of others, like one, obviously, it's probably caught the Samba Bajana, who's come up from England, and obviously, you know, a bit of an unknown really, but he's shown up well in games on trial and signed, and he's moved up to Inverness, so fair play to him. But it's again the question of how will he settle at the level. You've seen elsewhere, like said Horace Ormsby at Deveronvale, somebody who's made a similar move and done really well. So Forest, you're probably hoping, if you're Forest, you're hoping you get the same sort of impact. I mean, again, if you look below that for last season, Turriff were 12th, and that's now spoken a lot about young players and the project at Turriff, but majority of them now have got at least a season, if not 2 seasons, of experience playing together. With the signings they've made, there's a lot more probably competition, and as a result, you're seeing some players maybe leaving, like Liam Cheen went to Keith, Jordan Cooper's in the transfer list. And if you look at the signings they've made, I mean, Connor Grant was somebody Fraserburgh wanted to keep, promising young player. Finlay Murray, it was at Aberdeen, highly rated. John Allen, sort of, and you can look out for more of him in the coming weeks. But a kind of interesting career path was coming from Shetland and came down to Peterhead, and he's ended up at Turriff, and big things expected of him. And then
promising young player Neil Gold.
The other, the eye-catching one, again, somebody that's proven very much at the level, 360 goals, Neil Gold, who, you know, if you give him a chance, he'll score you a goal, basically.
I imagine we're probably showing the goal against Fraserburgh for Banks of Day last season on screen right now.
Probably.
Apologies if we're not.
But, so those 2 forward ones especially are quite eye-catching moves. And the competition Turriff's got, like if you look at their forwards, like Neil Gold and John Allen look like 2 good strikers, and then you've got Ewan Clark, who scored 17 goals last season, who'll be, I would imagine, be looking to play a fair bit as well, understandably. Another like Can players like, I mean, Dylan Stewart's one that's, played probably more than 100 games for Turriff already, still a young player, really good. Andy Watts back after being injured for basically all of last season. Then you've got somebody like Murray Cormack, who I've seen a few times and been really impressed by in the middle of the park, could probably step on again. So again, I'm probably saying all these teams looking to be better, but like, that's what they've to aspire to. And with Turriff, you think, well, with what they've got, there is, if they can cut out one or two maybe mistakes and inconsistency that's hampered them in the past, there is grounds for optimism in terms of improving again. Then you look, Clach were 13th, and they're, very much along similar lines. Brindle's obviously gone to Brora, and Blair Laurie's retired, but still can more or less the same team, and they're probably still looking to do one or two bits of pieces in terms of loans. And again, it's a bit like with Turriff, they've had a couple of seasons now playing together and experience, and if you speak to folk there, they don't want to keep saying, oh, we're a young team, it takes time. You now want to actually go and show what you're made of and achieve something. And they were in a cup final last season in North of Scotland Cup, and showed in flashes, as they have done the last 2 seasons, what they're capable of. So again, consistency for them in trying these sort of teams that were mid-table last season, trying to strive to be a bit better and put pressure on. And looking at things as it stands now, it's easy to say on paper before a ball's kicked, but I probably think there's more sides equipped to take points off the top 4 or 5 than there maybe has been in the past.
Can all these sides, I think maybe your top 7, on resources alone, maybe you'd be reasonably confident predicting them, but below that, when you look at Nairn, Huntly, Rothes, Forest, Turriff, Clach, is it just about who has the best season when it comes to maybe reaching a cup final, maybe finishing in that 8th position?
Well, I think if you're asking them, some maybe different aspirations to others, but I think some of them, Nairn being one, their record in cups in recent seasons hasn't been particularly great. I think really they'd be like the 2 cups are in Highland League Cup and the North of Scotland Cup, trying to really put a run together and try and win that. Cause like with these teams, you're all looking and going, on their day, at their best, they're capable of beating anyone over a season in the league. Can they be consistent? And maybe when you've got players missing for whatever reason, that becomes harder. But that's a challenge for them. And you were on about sort of the top 7, and it's easy to probably sit here and predict in sort of no particular order that the top 7 will be Brechin, Buckie, Brora, Fraserburgh, Formartine, Bankside, Inverurie. But it's, I don't think personally it's quite as straightforward as that. And I think some of these teams, that we've spoken about in the middle of the league, if they can make the improvements, there's no reason why they can't move a bit higher up. But it's funny speaking to people, and I've done a lot of waffling in this, but a lot of people sort of speak about trying to break into that top 6 and this and that, but there's a reason it's so difficult, because you can't have 10 teams in it.
That's mathematically impossible.
There's a reason why it's difficult, because the teams there are good as well. But
yeah, and they've got the clout to get the best players. And as we've heard from many managers this summer, it's been a difficult summer. Prices have been inflated. All these
seems
things.
Everyone always says, and I probably add to that narrative as well, that there seems to be less and less players going about. So
yeah, despite squads maybe being the same size. Anyway, we've got, I think, by my calculations, 5 more teams to discuss. Obviously, earlier on I mentioned that Brechin, they were unsuccessful in the pyramid playoffs. That's a route to get out of the league at the top. There's obviously at the bottom still that jeopardy that the team that finishes in 18th place could end up getting relegated, getting replaced by a team from one of 3 junior leagues as things stand. There'll be no changes from and this is the only time I'll mention it this season, the Conference League, the mooted Conference League that is now hopefully no more. But those bottom...
It's no more for the time being anyway.
For those bottom 5, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the start of last season we probably predicted Strathspey Thistle to be bottom, Deveronvale I think to be second bottom, I think third he maybe predicted Deveronvale to be bottom. I don't know if we would have
I think he said they'd be in the mix towards the bottom, I don't know.
Okay,
in fairness to him, I think he said they would be bottom.
Maybe misrepresenting what 30 said. Sorry, Paul. But Wick 16th, that was a bit of a surprise.
Aye, well, if you look at, I mean, you've mentioned Wick there, I suppose start with them. They actually started last season quite well, and then for one reason or another sort of got to the third round of the Scottish Cup was probably a big thing for them, their highlight, but after sort of that sort of towards the end of November just went into a major sort of tailspin and had issues with guys being unavailable, injuries, whatever. It can just seem to be a perfect storm of things going wrong for them, and we touched on it, but in the second half of last season towards the end they had some real kind of sore defeats.
There's one at Brechin.
There's a Brechin one, bit of one, and I'll maybe come back to it later when we're on to this weekend's games, but even they did a game at Banks of Dee where they were 6-0 down at half time, and I mean, to be fair, it only finished 6, but like that was again one where can hurt Gary Manson a lot. And as a result of all that, there's been quite significant changes at Wick. I mean, Gary's been trying to get all his squad on professional contracts because it's maybe something some people aren't aware of, but in the past there's been, quite a few guys at Wick who play for Wick on amateur forms because they also like to play amateur football in the summer and things like that, and there's quite a big sort of amateur scene in Caithness, so because guys would play on amateur forms but then start and end a season they might be unavailable in different things, and it could hamper Wick, so they're trying to move away from having players on that, and they've signed, I mean, the players have signed James Mackay, somebody who's been around the Highland League and North Caledonian League, who's been at Wick before, and various others. But the rest of them, Rob McLean, Owen Harold, Gary Poulin, Mark Coggill, Kyle Henderson's all guys who've played locally and are now stepping up into the Highland League. So as an observer, it's a bit of the kind of unknown in terms of how they take to it. But I think from what I hear, certainly Wick are very optimistic about these guys being up to the task and improving. Kyle Henderson in particular, forward player, somebody that I've heard quite good things about, so we'll maybe be treated to some of his goals and creativity hopefully on camera this season. But they're a changed side, Wick, and then the other way, likes of Ross Allen, that been here a long time, has stepped away, and then other guys like Sean Munro, Sean Campbell, James McIntosh, Cameron Montgomery, they've gone as well, so it's a sort of new look Wick, and I'm intrigued to see how they get on. I mean, Deveronvale, if you look at their summer business, it's all sort of young players again. Jamie McClellan from Fraserburgh, Matthew Peterman from Inverurie Locos, I mean, both, well, great deal of potential and could go on to be very good Highland League players, and Vale will be hoping they do that with them. And then there's a couple of other guys as well, like Jack Mitchell stepping up from their 18s and things like that. But obviously you're not entirely sure what you'll maybe get with the young players, and can maybe not the consistency. So I suppose again with Deveronvale you're probably looking at the likes of Harry Nobles, Ben Allens. Innes Mackay maybe isn't the oldest, but he's become sort of a big leader for them already. Dane Ballard, the more experienced heads, shall we say, to try and knit things together for them. Because I mean, last season there was a lot of games where Deveronvale, games that they lost by a goal or games they drew when they felt they should have won, and like they were in a lot of games perhaps more competitive than their league position suggests. But now I think it's trying to maybe convert some of those positions into points basically from games. And then Strathspey, I mean, again, they're pretty new look. There were encouraging signs towards the end of last season, and I mean, Robert McCormick's done a lot during the summer trying to sort of increase their depth and the quality within it. I mean, he sort of knows the North Cali League well, and brought in guys like Jack Mackay, Ian Ross, Jude Fraser, Taylor Sutherland, various players to try and improve it. And if these guys are wanting to step up and want relish in the challenge of it, so I mean, hopefully that reaps its rewards for Strathspey. I do think in terms of at the bottom end, the gap between Strathspey and 18th and then Vale, who were second bottom, was 14 points. I do think it'll be closer at the bottom this season. I think it's maybe the lazy prediction, but I think for me Strathspey would still be at the moment the favourites to be bottom, but you don't know what could happen, and I hope it's I mean, obviously nobody wants to be there, but I hope it's competitive at that end as well. And then obviously the two we haven't mentioned were up to now were Lossiemouth and Keith.
I wondered if you'd remember which ones you hadn't mentioned.
Who were 14th and 15th, and I mean, Lossie, interesting because they're another one very much the same core. I mean, they've signed Brandon Hutchison, who's scored quite a few goals at junior level. He's, I think, for Forest Thistle, he's come in, and that's probably the one thing. I think Lossie, in some games as well, they probably say they conceded too many goals, but like in the final third, trying to have that guy who'll potentially get you 15, 20 goals, say. I mean, everyone's after them, so it's not easy to get, but he can maybe be that player. And again, it's like they're a group that's been together for 2 or 3 years now, and Frank McKettrick's in there as the new manager. Good to see Frank sort of been around the league and around sort of football in the north and various guys. It's so good to see Frank actually managing in the Highland League, and he'll be hoping to just extract a bit more improvement again. And I always think, I mean, this is probably another trope or cliche of Highland League Weekly, but I always feel Lossie, particularly at Grant Park, they're never easy. It's never easy to go there and beat them in that, and I think that you're always looking, if they can have that strong home record again, pick up a lot of points at home, then they can do well. And obviously they'll be trying to improve on the road as well, but I always think with them, the sort of form at Grant Park's a sort of big backbone of their season. And then with Keith, I actually think their summer business has been, I think Craig Ewan would have liked to have done a bit more of it, but I've actually thought their summer business has been quite good. I mean, they lost Demilade Eunice to Inverurie Locos, but as part of that they did get Craig Gill coming the other way. And I mean, Craig Gill's somebody, I mean, for whatever reason he just was never quite able to fully establish himself at Locos, but he's a player, when I've seen him over probably 4 or 5 years now, I've always thought was quite good. And I think he's somebody that, if he actually gets a proper run at it, so to speak, I think he'll be a good player for Keith. They have also lost Kieran Mooney because he was up here for university and he's gone back down to Edinburgh. And I mean, he was a handful for them in the final third, so that's a blow. But then they brought in the likes of, I mean, Michael Taylor is a striker who's played a lot in the junior experience, seems to be a sort of focal point for them. I think Craig's hoping he'll give them something a bit different at the top end, so they'd be looking for him to sort of hit the ground running. Liam Cheen, who was mentioned earlier, I think adds good competition. He's a good player to have in the dressing room as well. So I think Keith's business, if I was a Keith supporter, I think you would be reasonably satisfied and be thinking that you could improve. I think last season was kind of bizarre because they had, like, the first sort of few months of the season they ticked away quite nicely, and at one point I think they were sitting 8th or 9th sort of in November time, and then between sort of postponements, cup competitions, one thing and another, they kind of had this sort of, they'd like a barren run, and then when they came out, even when they came out of that, it was kind of hard to really regain what they had before. And that's for even teams we mentioned earlier, but for those teams that were in the bottom 5 last season, it's like trying to avoid this, having these sort of morale, confidence sapping runs where you go 8, 9, 10 games without a win, or without 6 games, 6 straight defeats or something. And I mean, it can happen just because of how competitive the league is and the opposition you're up against. But when you have these sort of those bad runs, it can really it's not just actually losing the games, but the kind of momentum and the confidence dent as well is a big thing.
Self-perpetuating.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's all 18 teams. I won't ask you, Callum, for the obvious 2 predictions, because there'll be enough dodgy, controversial predictions this season on Highland League Weekly.
That's a disappointment.
But I will ask you, if you had to pick one signing that's been made this summer from out with the league, from within the league, that's going to be most exciting, most influential, what's the one you're looking at and going, it's a tasty one?
Oh, you've really put me on the spot there. It's hard to, not that I'm copping out here, but it's hard to say definite, because some of the signings I obviously haven't seen play before. Some of the ones, because for example, I think last year when we were doing this, I said, like about Brechin, Grady McGrath and Fraser McLeod, they've played for East Craigie Juniors, and that'd be interesting to see how they get on. And I mean, Fraser McLeod played about every game, and Grady McGrath was obviously top scorer, young player of the year, 35 goals, so clearly handled it no bother. So I mean, some of their sort of younger ones that have come out of full time or whatever could potentially make a really big impact again. Kyle Henderson, who I mentioned, heard big things about but haven't seen. Ben Kelly, it was North Caledonian Player of the Year, same thing. I think, so it's hard to pick one, but one that I do think, it's maybe an obvious one, but one that I do think is a really good signing, particularly in light of who they've lost as well, is Mark Lawrence for Formartine. And it's almost forgotten about a wee bit because it was done basically right at the end of just as last season finished, so kind of not really a summer deal almost, but I think he's one, particularly with Gallagher and Makita going, where you can see him playing in the middle of the park with Graham Roger, and I think he'll be a good signing for them. And I mean, it's maybe a wee bit surprising actually that he ended up leaving Fraserburgh, but I think that's one that I would pick out certainly, but there's various others that you could throw into the mix.
All right, well, we'll wait and see. Hopefully then that's the most comprehensive preview for the new Breedon Highland League season you'll see ahead of the action kicking off on Saturday. In the season ahead, we'll have, as we have the last 2 seasons, our Monday main Highland League Weekly show with highlights of 2 games, features, analysis, all the good stuff. We'll also still be doing a weekly preview show to every weekend's action. This weekend, our first 2 highlights games are going to be Brechin City against Formartine United. Very tasty opening clash for the main game, and the secondary game is going to be Turriff United against Inverurie Locos from the Hacks. Tune in on Monday at the Press and Journal website. If you're not already following the Highland League Weekly social channels, we've got Twitter, we've got a Facebook group, we've got Instagram, we've got TikTok, please get involved over on those platforms. And as I say at the end of all of these shows, enjoy the football, whichever games you're watching this weekend.